Matt Rhule said the quiet part out loud on Monday. We explain next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
All right, welcome in. It is Tuesday. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone in Omaha with you here. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic as well. Well, Monday, Matt Rhule had a bye week press conference. Mitch, I can't remember the last time that we had a regular press conference during the bye week. Usually, it's just expected that week gets taken off for the media luncheon.
Yeah, there was no food, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Sad.
I heard Matt Rhule. I was absent from this, watching on the stream because I had some things to take care of here around Omaha. I heard him apologize to the media for no Valentinos on the way out the door, which never needs to be. No need to apologize. That's just viewed as a bonus. It may have been last year. It may have been last year, the last time there was a bye week press conference. I'm not entirely sure on that if Rhule did it a year ago, but he generally likes to have press conferences. I don't think for many years leading up to that, it was a thing.
That's a good point. Maybe it's a Rhule thing against others. With that being said, a lot of stuff to chew on from the press conference yesterday. We're going to play you a couple videos in the opening, and the conversation about Heinrich Haarberg pop back up again and what his role might be. People love that thing like red meat. But let's start here. He was asked about sort of if that Illinois game was kind of like the Michigan game last year, in the sense of he felt like there wasn't enough, whether it be effort, it's all encapsulated in something, but they left something out there, right, against Illinois. And there was this edgy kind of response for Nebraska. Remember how we talked about they were mad the week after that going into the Purdue game? Here is Rhule on that, and the question here from I believe Sam McEwen of the World Herald.
To that Michigan moment, to this Illinois moment, and how you changed as a coach, and maybe button pushing is the wrong word, but like change maybe an approach or something.
No, I'm a button pusher. There's no doubt. That's my job. There's no doubt. Like I described it to the players today as it's like the whack-a-mole game, right? Like last year it was turnovers, and then you fix turnovers, boom, and all of a sudden penalties show up. Now you're like penalties. Now it's like, oh, field goal block, boom, and then the punt block. And it's like at some point you're trying to, but again, as the years go on, those things get less. The lessons are learned. The lessons I'm talking about or Tony's talking about start happening amongst the guys. And when people refer to culture, that's really what it is.
Okay, so I like that for a couple reasons. One, because he had enough of the question. He was done hearing it, and he liked the part about whether he's a button pusher. He's like, oh, no, I am a button pusher. Like I'm pushing guys' buttons all the time. That's what I do as a head coach. So if you guys have this narrative out there, and I agree with it, that the guys are mad, that's probably because of me, because I did something to make them mad. So this is the kind of stuff that we've speculated about for a long time with Rhule. Like, is he really pushing buttons? Is he behind the scene? Like, is he the puppet master? And he just said it. He's like, yep, that's me. That's what I do. That's my job.
I'm glad he said it, because we have been calling him that we could see it from the outside, but I don't know how he felt about it. Like, does he like being called a button pusher? And it seems like, yes, currently he does enjoy it. So it makes a lot of sense with his personality and some of the things that they've done. Everything is a test, right? I think he's trying to put his team through various things. I think he's making him, he artificially, I think, sometimes try to makes them like feel certain ways. Like, here's how it should be. Here's how this should be. And then I think he likes it, as he's talked about before. So I guess it's not a thought. It's a fact. He loves it when his team goes through different things. Like, they lost that game to Illinois, and people are like, oh my God, the sky is falling on the outside. And Rhule's like, perfect. I'm going to get them to play better. Like he didn't like that they lost, but he's like, I'm going to get their attention, and I'm like, we're going to be able to fix this lickety split. So he is a button pusher. There's no doubt about it. I'm just glad to hear him say it.
And are all coaches? Because I don't think they are. I think some guys just want to coach ball, and they're not into that stuff. Like they're not into it's kind of manipulation is what it is.
Totally.
And I think some coaches, like, that's just not their thing. And I don't know if it has to be. I think to a certain level, there's a psychological element that you have to bring into your program as the head coach when you have 130 guys, or maybe it's 105 guys. It has to be a part of it. But Rhule, for better or for worse, embraces that, and he just flat out said it yesterday.
We always do this, but compare him to the previous coach who said literally that he wasn't into sloganeering. Like this coach is. Like sometimes you have to do some weird different things to motivate your team and to grab their attention. And like, you want to talk about a coach who is into sloganeering and seems to be working pretty well. They have messages everywhere. It's like Matt Rhule is like, I don't know. I feel like that's a Michael Scott move to just take out a piece of printer paper and start putting messages all over the place, or Post-it notes all over the place. But seriously, and to be like, Michael Scott ended up being a pretty good boss and a halfway decent motivator, right, at the end of the day. So like, I think Rhule, like he takes all of that. There's constant reminders all around the building, all around the facility, all around Memorial Stadium, to say, here's what you need to focus on a daily basis. So I think it keeps them focused on the right things. And I think that was something that the program needed, at the time when Matt Rhule came in, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
The other thing from that clip that I want to point out is he did a good job. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the animated movements from Rhule when he was whack-a-mole. He was hammering that mole. That's something that I think we've been thinking about or talking about with this team as it relates to special teams, or like when the offense plays well, the defense has a down day. And then on a game like Saturday against Rutgers, when the offense has a bad stretch, the defense has seemed to step up. So he explained how they're kind of dealing with that as a staff, whether it's him or Tony White. The things that they say at some point will become things that the players say to each other. And this is a part of like the year 2 culture growth. And as a result, you're going to see that whack-a-mole situation. I don't know what I think of that. I mean, I feel like, can you just get past that and have everybody play well at the same time? What do you think?
There's a comfort there. I'll say this, like, I think everyone wants their team to play to the fullest of their capabilities all the time. But I think it's nice that when Rhule comes out afterwards and says, we are right, like, not exactly, but we are right where we need to be. We're hitting these right steps. This is a year 2 thing. You slide back down and you come back up. Like, I don't know, it's kind of comforting. Because everybody else after that Illinois game is sitting there like, whoa. They're not there yet. We took it too far. They're not good, like, and all this other stuff. And he's like, nope, we're right where we need to be. So, like, I think that could be a calming voice at the right time as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but I do appreciate how he handles those things.
Sometimes he just says the things that the fans think, and I think that's refreshing for people out in the audience. There have been coaches, and I'm not talking about Scott Frost, but there have been coaches, and there are coaches in college football today who I think want to be contrarians and want to say things and do things that they don't feel like the public wants them to do. Maybe it's a backup quarterback, and the public is clamoring for a backup quarterback to play. And I think there are head coaches out there who are like, this is my team. I'm going to play the other guy. I'm going to keep my starter in for one series longer. Like, it's not a real mature way to run your team, but the flip side is to not just see what they say, but to express those feelings, to say it. Rhule sees this whack-a-mole situation that everybody else sees. When we come back, we're going to talk about something else that the head coach has seen that I think fans will relate very much to. That's next after this break. Okay, Mitch Sherman here to tell you about Roy, and it is time to highlight our Roy Player of the Week. Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions, support directly to their favorite athletes. Download Roy for iOS and Android. Enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered in a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. This week, drum roll, we have selected Brian Buschini as the Roy Player of the Week at Nebraska because, well, why do you even need to ask? Because he should have been knocked out of the game after his first punt. Instead, he stayed in. He threw a fake punt pass to Jalen Lloyd that flipped the field. He flipped the field twice in the fourth quarter of that game. He was a huge part of the reason that Nebraska won that game and improved to 5-1 and has relatively good vibes going into this bye week and then the week next week against the Indiana. So if you enjoyed Brian Buschini's performance on Saturday, you can show him some love. Just hop on Roy, display your appreciation for Brian, our Roy Player of the Week, and his standout performance against Rutgers, as well as what he'll continue to do for this Nebraska program. Get off the sidelines, get into the NIL game today with Roy. Okay, welcome back to the Locked On Nebraska podcast, segment 2 on this Tuesday. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is here with me. We are going to get to that thing that I teased at the end of the last segment about stuff Matt Rhule talks about that fans feel. That's like the $100,000 pyramid show. There's the answer to the question. You call it out, I'll be like, run the ball.
Yeah.
Keep the defense off the field, all these kinds of things, and you can have the little answer over your head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a whole lot of reason first to talk more about Brian Buschini. Just heard about him in an ad read. We spent parts of the past 2 episodes talking about Nebraska's punter. Pretty soon, I think we'll just have a podcast called Locked On Buschini.
Nice.
If it keeps up like this. I do want to play this clip from Matt Rhule on Brian Buschini from the press conference on Monday in Lincoln.
Not many people have a punter with an arm like ours does. I mean, he can throw, and so a lot of people wouldn't throw a 22-yard honey hole shot, right? Like that's hard to do. But thankfully, Buschini's probably got one of the better arms on the team. To be quite honest, he's really good at this stuff.
We got to look at we got an inside look at Rhule's vocabulary yesterday. We got honey hole, which I mean, incredible use of that. In an effort to not talk about another school, he talked about Blue Mountain State.
Mountain State.
Yeah. There was another one that I can't remember what it was, but I was like, gosh, he's really going there. He's really going for it today. Like you said, though, he's a little bit laid back. I wonder what he means by Buschini can throw. Like, I didn't know that he had that in his bag. Like are there going to be more fake punts? And people are going to be ready for it now. And obviously Rutgers was the right team to run it against because of the way that they like to come after punts. But Buschini can throw. Like he can really throw it. Interesting.
That's another Rhuleism. He can throw. Yeah.
No, he did that one time where he said, we practiced.
Yeah. I was trying to remember the previous time that he did that. Like I understand it. It sounds like if you type that out, it doesn't make any sense. But when you hear him say it, you understand what he's saying there. So Marquise Buford had the quote after the game on Saturday about, I wish if we had 130 Brian Buschini's on this team, then it would be a great team. I think we played that in the reaction show or talked about it in the reaction show on Sunday, or maybe we didn't. And I just heard it other places and am confused about what I'm thinking. Maybe he could be a quarterback. I mean, now you're starting to fill up the field with places that Brian Buschini could play. Now, I don't see him playing left tackle. I don't see him playing corner. I don't see him playing linebacker, but 130 of him on the team would make for an interesting team for sure. So
I can't remember. Just one quick thing while we're talking about just random stuff here. It was, and I had played the clip for a long time on my show in an open in Lincoln, but somebody somewhere along the way, this is back in like 2015, somewhere around there. Somebody had the great quote. I think it was like Jack Gangwish or something like that. They were like, if we had 22 Janos, we'd be all right. I love that idea that you could, like, it's a mascot game with one specific player. If we had 22 Janos, if we had 22 Brian Buschinis, we'd be all right. I love it when coaches or people say that about players. It's the ultimate sign of respect. I love it.
And yet so nonsensical. So Rhule was asked another question from Sam McEwen. Thank you, Sam, for picking up the slack while we had a lighter attended press conference on Monday. It was a question about, and I like the way that Sam phrased it, about Heinrich Haarberg. And Sam said, hey, I'm hearing from a lot of people about why Heinrich Haarberg isn't playing anymore. And I think that's a good way to ask it, because it's more difficult to, sometimes you're just trying to get the coach to talk about something. And it's more difficult, I think, to get him to talk about it if he just said, hey, what's going on with Haarberg? Why aren't you playing him more? Or how can you? It was. I liked it. I liked the veteran move.
Agreed
by Sam. So Rhule said, I think he needs to play more. He said, so I don't disagree with what a fan says. The challenge is having a lot of good players on offense. And then Rhule went on to say that people say to him, give it to Ja'Cory Barney 9 times a game. Throw the fade to Isaiah Nair. Why is Fedoni? Why is or isn't he, depending on your perspective, catching it 5 times a game? Some might want him to get it more than 5 times a game. Thomas has not scored a touchdown this year. Well, he actually did score one on Saturday, but it was not ruled a touchdown. Get the ball to Jamal Banks. Why hasn't Carter Nelson touched the ball today? Hand it to Janiran Bonner on the reverse. Those are all the things that Rhule rolled off in that answer about why Haarberg hasn't seen it more. And the point is, because there's a lot of weapons on offense. And, hey, if you're going 3 and out, which they did in the second half throughout that Rutgers game, you can't get the ball to all of those people.
It's like, this is such a, we talked about this for an entire month during the summer, like in August. It was like, what's the role for Heinrich Haarberg? What's it gonna be? We could look back at our podcast episodes and say, well, what's the role going to be for Heinrich Haarberg? And it's very clear that the role is gadget player. He could come in for 2 or 3 times a game, catch somebody by surprise. At least he's, in the Rutgers game, he was used as a decoy. Basically, he was the tip of the I formation and, flipped off the other way, and they flipped it the other way. So, or he could go like the Illinois game and do a throwback pass, like whatever it is with them, 1, 2, 3 times a game. I think that's fine. And Rhule's like, I think he needs the ball more. And I think that's more of like a compliment to him, just saying, hey, look, I think he's a good player and he's certainly capable of handling the ball more than he does. But what he said about the rest of the guys is the truth. Like, there's only so many places that the ball can go in an individual game. And so I don't know how many more trick plays, gadget plays you're going to line him up for, or if you're talking about bringing him in for series at quarterback, and that would mean taking Dylan Raiola off the field. And I just don't know if that's a great idea. Like, that doesn't seem like the best, most efficient use of your football players.
If they have a first half like they did the second half on Saturday, maybe you would see that, just to kind of break up the flow. If they're playing Ohio State or Indiana and Dylan needs to take a seat, not because there's any controversy, like he's the guy, like he's the present, he's the future, he's everything to Nebraska, but you do have a capable player who would give a defense a whole lot of other stuff to think about. So I don't know, maybe you could bring him in, and not even a series, maybe you bring him in for 2 or 3 plays to run some wildcat. He can throw a pass, to do something. And the other point that Rhule made in talking about Haarberg is that he has to spend the majority of his time during the week in practice being the number 2 quarterback. Yep. He can't spend 80% of his time or even 40% of his time working on this gadget stuff, because he's one snap away, one play away from being in the game as the quarterback. So I think that's also important to remember.
All right, let's take a quick break. I'm sure that'll be a never-ending conversation here throughout the remainder of the football season with Heinrich Haarberg. Appreciate you guys subscribing on YouTube. Continue to do that at Locked On Nebraska. Leave a comment, subscribe, and send us an email, lockedonneb@gmail.com. We'll get to those in the mailbag shows over the next couple of weeks as well. We'll be back after this. All right, it's Apper for the FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, of course. We have so many things going on right now. We are full swing into the NFL season. We have baseball playoffs. The Kansas City Royals, at this very moment of recording, which is Tuesday morning, are plus 1,300 to win the World Series. That's the worst odds of anyone left in the playoffs.
But they won last night.
Interesting. So whenever you get the hunch, maybe you're listening to a podcast and you get the hunch in the middle of a podcast, in the middle of a game, wherever you are, you place that $5 bet and you get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is place that first $5 bet. That's with our friends from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Once again, first $5 bet gets you started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's at FanDuel.com. All right, back with the final segment here on a Tuesday. So here's something that's taken people's attention over the last couple of weeks, and I think deservedly so. I think it has infused some sort of edge into the Nebraska football team. So each of the last 2 weeks now, Nebraska has staged a one-on-one physicality, sort of like a leverage drill, right? It's not an Oklahoma drill. An Oklahoma drill would require like a ball carrier and people tackling each other.
True.
You're basically you're gathering the whole team up at the middle of the field. You're singling 2 guys out, and they're basically just blocking each other. That's
It's physical.
They're just blocking each other. It's almost wrestling or sumo wrestling more than anything else. But it has added something. They did it at Purdue, and now they did it at Rutgers, against Rutgers.
They did it on Saturday, and it wasn't just backups. It was a lot of backups at Purdue, and then this game, there was one with Ty Robinson against Micah Mazuka.
Yeah, interesting. So they're just pulling people out and saying, "Hey, let's go get it," and it gets people going. Here's Matt Rhule when asked about that one-on-one drill that they staged over the last 2 weeks.
What is the thinking with that?
There is no thinking. It's just it's so much of this is just passion and energy and excitement, and so it's like, hey, we're gonna come together and we're gonna just celebrate each other. And the guys, our team really revolves around certain guys, right? So when Roman Mangini goes out there and he went against Hartzog, right? He was a starter. That wasn't and those 2 guys battle at the guard. It just lights your team up a little bit. So we might not do it next week. Who knows? Who knows what we'll do? But it's just something that just seemed to make sense, right? I think so much of this thing is getting out of your head and going from your heart, and it just felt like at Purdue maybe we needed that. Just not needed it, but did it. But the whole I don't know if I told you the whole onus of it, the whole origination of it came from when I used to work for my mentor, one of my mentors, George DeLeon. He would talk about over the years playing Nebraska, and when you played Nebraska, he said, and I don't know if this is true. People say I'm a lot full of it, but this is what he told me. He said the O-line would line up and they'd put the D-line or the linebackers, and they would run into him, and then the O-line would hit them. And as the other team was running out, he said half the time you lost the game. Or maybe Phil Snow's you lost the game before you even played them. You just came out and you saw the physicality of Nebraska.
Button pushing is what it is.
100%. There is no thought. There is definitely a thought behind it. And it's hey, I just came up with this idea. I think the team needs it right now. Let's go do this is what you get to be able to do when you're the head coach of a football program. You get to say, you get to be the little, the puppet master. Go here, hit each other, and if it works out and it helps the team from a mental perspective, then all the more power to you.
That was a long clip, and we could have cut it off after the part where he got done talking about Roman Mangini and Malcolm Hartzog, but I wanted to leave the stuff in there about the origination of the story because Rhule had a way of bringing it back to Nebraska. I don't know that Nebraska did that. It probably did. There was probably some defensive lineman way back who wanted to just have a reason to kick the snot out of a linebacker. So he said, all right, hey, when these guys come out of the tunnel for warmups over on their side, I'm going to go crush you into the ground right in front of them. So it's intimidating, as if Nebraska needed that at that moment.
Right.
There were many reasons why opponents lost games against Nebraska before the game started. And you pile this one on top of that, on top of the legend. The other thing I'll say, the funny part about this is like it really took some coaxing to get Rhule to discuss this. Like he was asked about it after the Purdue game in the post-game presser, and he wanted nothing to do with it. He's like, no, that's just something we did. And then he's been asked about it a couple other times, and he's been kind of getting a little more loose with it. And then yesterday he finally just said, whatever, it's a bye week, I'll talk about this.
But sometimes that's the like that is the answer, because I know people can't understand that sometimes. Like, hey, look, why did you do that? What's the thought process behind it? And Rhule's like, hey, look, there is no thought process. It's just something that we did. It just felt right in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like that's the cool part about being a really good button pusher. One of the best coaches that I ever had, just like we had stuff that we did and that we were a pretty good team, but like, we were looking for structure in our pregame warm-ups or whatever it might be. And because that's something that we had always had as like high school baseball players. And it was like, Coach, what do we do? And he would just repeatedly say, whatever you got to do to get ready for the game. Whatever you got to do, whatever, just be ready, whatever you got to do to get ready for the game. So he gave us that power. And like, I felt like that was super empowering to us. And I think this is Matt Rhule's version of that. This gets you ready. We're going to get you ready for the game. Here you go.
Figuring out what his team needs.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, that's kind of a wrap on what happened Monday in Lincoln. Not super eventful. Huskers have got some guys working back from injuries. Tristan Alvano might be back for the Indiana game. Tommy Hill, it sounds like, has a good chance of being back for the Indiana game as he deals with that foot injury. He was out warming up before kickoff, so it's just kind of a late scratch. But frankly, Nebraska's got Sierra Wright, who's playing. He's getting discussed at like an all-conference level, or something along those lines. One of the better corners, one of the better stories on this Nebraska team in the first half of the season. It's kind of snuck up on us here at the end of the first half. So as we get going through this week, we are going to bring you at least one episode. I think we'll do this, Connor, on Wednesday, that has some superlatives and some reviews of the first half, maybe some surprises, things of that nature. And of course, start to get you ready for Indiana week.
Love it. Can't wait. This is it's what it's for. 5-1 through the first 6 games, and the next 6 will be pretty fun as well. All right. He's Mitch Sherman. I'm Connor Happer. That's it for today's edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Appreciate this being your first listen. I got a second listen for you. It's the Locked On College Football podcast. They'll get you through everything through week 6 of the college football season. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.